Hello and welcome to week 8 of PUBH 612. Today we will discuss monitoring implementation through budgets and information systems. The learning objectives for this week are to apply fixed and variable costs to examples, to distinguish between direct and indirect costs, to be able to critique a program, its cost evaluation with regard to its rigor, to distinguish among the different type of economic analyses that you can do, and to relate the process theory to the program costs. As budgets are one of the most important behind-the-scenes aspects of a successful program and are an important component of a manager's responsibilities, it's essential that we review some of the budgeting terminology and make sure that we're all on the same page and are all familiar with these terms. Fixed costs do not vary with the number of clients served, and they must be paid, such as rent or salaries of administrative staff and insurance costs. Variable costs, on the other hand, do vary, as the name implies, and they vary with the number of clients served, and they include personnel and marketing. You'll notice that some staff are considered fixed costs, while others are considered variable. And the distinction is, if program staff members are paid regardless of how many clients show up, then those costs are fixed. But if you're using part-time workers on an as-needed basis, those costs are variable. Direct costs are costs associated with the direct delivery of a program, such as staff salaries and some materials and supplies needed for use with clients. Those would be considered direct costs, while indirect costs are what we would call overhead, as they support the program but not directly. Examples of this would be clerical support and utilities. Charges are what are billed to clients and typically include the cost plus a profit margin. But the costs are the sum of all the resources required to provide the service, and we always want the charges to be greater than the costs. Total costs equal the direct costs plus the indirect costs, while total revenue is the total amount of money received minus the total costs. Opportunity costs refer to purchases that can't be made because of having spent the money on something else. Opportunity costs to a program participant depend on the health program. For instance, you could measure losses or gains in work productivity, the family burden of a health problem, or other out-of-pocket costs associated with program participation, such as transportation or lunch. Those could all be opportunity costs. In healthcare, we talk about the ratio of charges to costs, and the RCC must be 1 or greater, as charges need to be more than costs. Usually on a monthly basis, a program manager should review the expenditures and whether or not they exceed what was projected for the project. The difference between the budgeted and actual expenditures or income is called the budget variance. The variance is calculated for each budget category or line item by subtracting the expenditures from the budgeted amount. Negative variance can be due to inadequate income or overspending, while positive variance can be due to the opposite. During program implementation, the overall variance ought to be no more than 10 to 20% of the projected budget for an expense category. Some funding agencies will specify the degree of budget variance that is acceptable, so make sure to closely review your funding requirements. Some more on budgets. It's important to include the costs of evaluating your program in your budget from the start. A good rule of thumb is that a meaningful evaluation cannot be done for less than 10% of the direct program costs. Budget justifications are also required for funding proposals, and anything over $500 needs to be justified. There are several types of cost-related analysis that you can do of a program. Here are the 4 main types of economic analyses and their descriptions. First, cost comparison compares the costs of 2 or more programs without looking at outcomes or impacts. They can look at cost per participant or for the revenues generated by several programs. An agency might do a cost comparison if it provided several different health programs, all for the same health problem, and needed to eliminate one. Cost effectiveness analysis compares the costs of 2 programs against one type of impact that is measured the same way in both programs. This enables the programs to compare on the basis of cost per unit of outcome. This information can help program managers decide which type of program to implement. Cost-benefit analysis also compares 2 programs, but the programs don't have to address the same health problem. Instead, the program effects are compared based on larger societal benefits, in addition to the outcomes and the impacts of the program. Lastly, there are cost-utility analyses, which measures the outcomes of health programs in terms of the potential participants' preference for the health outcome. This is the most complex and theoretical of all the economic analyses. Another type of analysis is the break-even analysis. Break-even is the point at which expenses related to providing the program are equal to or less than the revenues generated for or from the program. The analysis uses the charge, the variable cost of the program, and the fixed cost of the program in this equation. When the total fixed costs are divided by the difference between the amount charged per client and the variable cost per client, the results will give you the number of services needed to break even. Healthcare has been slow to adopt new information technology, but in 2009, the American Recovery and Reconstruction Act provided resources and financial incentives for healthcare providers and organizations to speed their adoption of health information technology. This led to a new requirement that healthcare facilities now have electronic health records rather than paper records. The health information system is used to collect, store, utilize, and share information. As the availability of cell phones and other handheld electronic devices expand, so do the possibilities for monitoring and implementing health programs with these types of technologies. We already have things like text reminders and mHealth interventions and wearable health information sensing devices such as Fitbits or Apple Watches. Geographic information systems, also called GIS, are used to display public health information such as how a disease has spread across a community, and can be very useful in public health program planning and evaluation. There are many benefits to these new technologies, but we must also consider issues around data security and privacy, as well as the accuracy of the data which is entered into the system. In summary, the key takeaways for this week are that budgeting is a key aspect of program management, and you should make sure that you're familiar and comfortable with the budgeting terminology that we reviewed this week and the requirements of your funding source regarding your budget. There are also many types of cost-related analyses which can be used to make more informed program choices. Select whichever analysis is the best fit for your program and your health outcome. Lastly, the use of health information technology and health informatics is growing as we are using these new technologies in new ways to implement and monitor health programs and health outcomes. And I encourage you to think about how we can better use these technologies to improve health and reduce healthcare costs in the future. Here are some additional internet resources that you can check out. Please also make sure that you review any additional materials on Blackboard. That's it for this week. Thanks.